What if I told you that 12 of the world's most elite intelligence agents, trained to disappear, trained to survive, entered a country and 11 of them vanished without a trace? No explosions, no headlines, no bodies, just silence. This isn't a spy thriller. This isn't fiction. This is real. Israel sent 12 operatives deep into India on a top secret mission. And what happened next has left the entire world stunned, confused, and afraid. In a world where every move is monitored, every signal tracked, and every threat calculated, how can elite agents just disappear? What force is powerful enough to dismantle an operation this sophisticated, this covert, this untouchable? Today, you're not just going to hear a story. You're stepping into a global mystery, a chilling power play that exposes the future of warfare, silent, invisible, psychological. So don't blink, don't scroll, don't look away. Because by the end of this video, you won't just know what happened. You'll understand why it matters for Israel, for India, for Iran, and for the balance of power in a world teetering on the edge of unseen wars. Stay with me. The silence speaks louder than ever. In early 2025, amid growing tensions between Israel and Iran, a highly confidential operation was authorized deep within the Israeli intelligence apparatus. The objective: neutralize a network that Israeli officials believed was operating quietly within India, one that allegedly had ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard and was funneling intelligence, money, and weapons across South Asia. The operation was not routine. It wasn't just surveillance, it was surgical. The selection of agents was meticulous. These weren't ordinary operatives. They were specialists fluent in regional languages, trained in psychological manipulation, infiltration, and advanced surveillance evasion. The 12 agents chosen were considered ghosts, undetectable, even by the most sophisticated systems. Their cover stories were airtight: business consultants, diplomats, tech investors, even journalists. They blended into Indian society from the bustling corporate hubs of Bengaluru to the alleyways of Old Delhi. Their insertion into India was silent, planned with extreme precision. No official records bore their names. No entry logs would ever confirm their arrival. The mission was a high-stakes gamble. Israeli intelligence believed Iran had outsourced parts of its strategic operations to operatives in India, recruiting locals, exploiting border vulnerabilities, and even forging ties with non-state actors in Kashmir and northeastern India. The Israeli agents were tasked with identifying key operatives, establishing patterns of activity, and if necessary, conducting eliminations or abductions. They had a narrow operational window: 30 days. No external support, no diplomatic fallback, full deniability. Even Israel's own embassy in New Delhi was reportedly kept in the dark about the full scope of the mission. But the secrecy was a double-edged sword. With no open communication lines, no extraction protocols, and only encrypted burst transmissions to a secure server in Tel Aviv, the agents were on their own. Despite this, initial reports coming out of Israel described the team as fully operational within 72 hours of arrival. Shadow meetings were recorded, surveillance footage was obtained, a pattern was forming, but what they were stepping into was far more dangerous than they imagined. Whispers in intelligence circles later hinted that the Iranian-backed network had already caught wind of the infiltration. Whether through intercepted communications, moles within India, or surveillance of Israeli digital footprints, the hunters may have become the hunted far sooner than anticipated. The disappearance of 11 out of 12 Israeli agents sent to India did not unfold with chaos or noise. It was a vanishing act, executed in complete silence. There were no distress calls, no last-minute pings, no digital fingerprints that hinted at a struggle or compromise. One by one, agents operating in vastly different parts of the country went dark. The first went silent in Mumbai, an agent known for his counter-surveillance expertise. Within 48 hours, 2 more in Delhi followed. Then another from Hyderabad, one from Kolkata, and so on. Each disappearance was staggered, methodical, almost as if someone was ticking names off a list. The calculated timing created a chilling impression of coordinated neutralization, rather than coincidental failures or bad luck. Indian cities are notoriously difficult to monitor for foreign operatives. With dense populations, layered bureaucracies, and unpredictable social dynamics, even the most trained agents can be swallowed whole without a trace. Yet these agents were not ordinary field officers. They were seasoned professionals, skilled at survival, evasion, and remaining invisible. That they disappeared without triggering a single visible countermeasure points towards something far more organized and formidable than local law enforcement or street-level surveillance. Analysts in Israel later suggested the presence of a shadow network, possibly made up of Iranian sympathizers, ex-military contractors, or even compromised elements within regional security forces. Some theories propose that the agents walked into pre-planned traps, lured by fake informants or honey traps planted weeks in advance. Others pointed toward advanced tracking methods, thermal sensors, facial recognition databases, or even electromagnetic pulse technology that could disable electronic gear silently. One surviving agent, Agent 12, managed to send a partial report days after the rest went dark. It was brief and fragmented, but what it implied was terrifying. It hinted at local handlers being intercepted, phones cloned, and dead drops compromised. The agent mentioned that the team had likely been identified and marked within days of their arrival. What followed was not surveillance, it was a systematic dismantling. By the time the Israeli command back home recognized the scale of the crisis, it was too late. Attempts to track, extract, or even confirm the status of the 11 agents failed entirely. They had vanished into the vast fabric of India's cities, towns, and wilderness, leaving behind no bodies, no witnesses, and no digital breadcrumbs. India's official silence in the wake of the reported disappearance of 11 Israeli intelligence agents has generated widespread intrigue and concern within global intelligence circles. As a democratic nation with a robust media ecosystem, such incidents usually trigger leaks, press questions, and political commentary. But this time, nothing came. No statements from the Ministry of External Affairs, no press releases from intelligence bureaus, and no sign of parliamentary inquiry. The entire government apparatus remained conspicuously quiet. This silence has raised questions not only about what India knew, but when it knew it. If India was unaware of the Israeli operation, then the sudden vanishing of 11 foreign agents on its soil would represent a massive security failure. But if India was aware and chose not to act, it could suggest a deeper, more strategic calculation at play. Some analysts believe India's silence is rooted in its delicate balancing act between Israel and Iran. While India and Israel have strong defense and intelligence ties, India also shares crucial energy, trade, and geopolitical interests with Iran. Openly acknowledging the presence of Israeli agents conducting covert operations against Iranian interests in Indian territory could ignite a diplomatic firestorm. By remaining silent, India may be attempting to contain the fallout, avoid entangling itself in another regional conflict, and preserve its carefully managed bilateral relationships. Furthermore, the absence of any formal protests or security alert suggests either India was complicit in allowing the Israeli operation, or it quietly agreed to look the other way, at least until it spiraled beyond control. There was also speculation that Indian intelligence agencies, particularly the Research and Analysis Wing, RAW, might have monitored the Israeli operatives from the moment they entered the country. If India's counterintelligence teams were indeed tracking the agents, they may have chosen to remain passive observers, allowing the drama to unfold as a way to gather intelligence themselves. But the sudden disappearances would have disrupted this approach, prompting urgent internal reviews and perhaps a blackout on information to prevent embarrassment or escalation. The possibility that another power, perhaps Iran or a third-party actor, was able to dismantle an Israeli operation on Indian soil right under the watch of Ra would be a humiliation the Indian establishment would want to avoid at all costs. Hence, the silence is not just a diplomatic tool, it is likely a containment measure for a much larger, more complex intelligence debacle. The lone surviving agent, known only through internal code as Agent 12, holds the key to understanding the true depth of what transpired during the covert Israeli operation in India. His survival was not merely chance, it was strategy, instinct, and perhaps a measure of luck. He operated in a remote northeastern region, far from the urban nodes where his counterparts were stationed. His mission focus was reconnaissance, with orders to avoid direct contact until targets were fully confirmed. This deliberate operational distance may have spared him from the trap that consumed the others. Days after the final disappearance, Agent 12 activated an emergency protocol. An encrypted signal burst that reached Tel Aviv just long enough to transmit fragments of a status report. Though incomplete, the message hinted at a dangerous and unseen force unraveling their mission from the inside. Agent 12 reported signs of compromise across their logistics chain. Safe houses were compromised, equipment caches had been tampered with, local informants were either missing or had gone dark. Surveillance tools planted by the agents were being found and dismantled with alarming speed, indicating that the enemy had mapped out their operational methods. What stood out in the transmission was a chilling line: "We were known before we arrived." It suggested that the network they were sent to observe had somehow obtained their identities, movements, and methods before they had even crossed into Indian borders. This raised the possibility of a leak inside Israeli intelligence or interception of mission planning through cyber espionage. Further adding to the mystery was Agent 12's account of being shadowed, not by Indian law enforcement, but by individuals who displayed military-level discipline and stealth. He described unfamiliar tactics, avoidance of surveillance blind spots, and a systematic effort to herd him into isolation. Sensing the noose tightening, Agent 12 chose not to engage or run. Instead, he erased his digital trail, buried his equipment, and vanished into the civilian population. No contact has been made since, and it is assumed he has either fled to a neighboring state under deep cover or gone underground within India itself. His partial report has become the cornerstone of Israel's internal investigation. It paints a picture not of operational failure, but of a preemptive ambush, an enemy that anticipated the move, prepared for it, and executed a counterstrike without firing a single bullet. The aftermath of the Israeli agent's disappearance triggered a frenzy within Israel's intelligence community, particularly within Mossad, which was responsible for overseeing the mission. What was initially a black ops surveillance operation evolved overnight into a crisis of epic proportions. Within Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv, a special task force was assembled to reconstruct the events. Secure lines burned with encrypted chatter, forensic analysts combed through satellite feeds, intercepted calls, and digital traces from Indian infrastructure. But nothing led to a breakthrough. There were no signals, no anomalies, no predictable patterns. It was as if the agents had entered a vacuum of intelligence where even the most advanced tools failed to detect a single point of re-entry. That silence, more than anything, signaled to Mossad that this was not a failure of its agents, It was the presence of an adversary playing at an equal or even superior level. Internally, questions began to emerge about whether Israeli cyber systems had been penetrated prior to the mission. Could Iran have tapped into secure Mossad channels? Was there a mole within the upper command? These weren't hypothetical concerns. They were immediate threats to national security. A complete operational debrief was ordered, stretching from satellite branches in Cyprus and Georgia to digital units in Herzliya. Every asset that had ever come in contact with the Indian mission was scrutinized. Some operatives were pulled from field duty and placed under surveillance themselves. This level of internal auditing was rare and indicated just how seriously the leadership viewed the implications. The larger concern, however, was reputational. Mossad had long enjoyed the image of an unstoppable force, masters of infiltration, precision, and secrecy. The sudden disappearance of 11 elite agents on foreign soil with no explanation and no retaliatory action created a credibility vacuum. Allied intelligence agencies began asking quiet but uncomfortable questions. If Israel couldn't protect its own operatives, how could it protect shared intelligence? The blow was not just operational, it was symbolic, and Mossad knew it. There were calls for a shadow retaliation, one that would restore fear and respect without triggering diplomatic backlash. But until there was clarity on what happened and who was responsible, any action risked further exposure. For the first time in decades, Israel's most feared agency found itself not in control of the board, but staring at pieces that had been moved without its knowledge. The global intelligence community reacted with hushed urgency as whispers of the Israeli agent's disappearance in India reached foreign capitals. Major powers such as the United States, Russia, China, and even regional players like Turkey and Saudi Arabia began quietly analyzing what had occurred, not just for its shock value, but for what it revealed about the changing dynamics of covert warfare. Many saw in this event a powerful signal. The traditional supremacy of Western and Israeli intelligence services could be contested and perhaps even defeated by decentralized or asymmetrical counter networks. In closed-door meetings, intelligence agencies began reevaluating their operational security, especially when deploying elite units in countries with shifting geopolitical loyalties. The silence from India, combined with the lack of Israeli response, created an information vacuum that intelligence analysts raced to fill with satellite tracking, asset debriefings, and electronic warfare simulations. The conclusions were unnerving for many. It appeared not only that the agents had been identified, but that their mission was anticipated in advance and dismantled with surgical efficiency. Iran's role in the incident became the focus of global scrutiny. Though Tehran never publicly commented, their media outlets ran stories hinting at a strategic victory against foreign operatives, veiled in the language of resistance and national sovereignty. Intelligence insiders suspected that Iran, through its Quds Force or linked non-state actors, had expanded its asymmetric reach far beyond the Middle East. If they were indeed responsible, this marked one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence operations carried out on neutral soil in recent history. The incident reshaped how intelligence was viewed in Asia, particularly in regions where India played a central balancing role between competing powers. China, for example, reportedly increased surveillance on Israeli assets operating near its Belt and Road projects, fearing similar covert moves. Meanwhile, U.S. agencies began quietly auditing their joint operations with Mossad to assess any shared vulnerabilities. Perhaps the most lasting impact was psychological. The disappearance of the agents reminded intelligence circles that the age of complete dominance was over. Now even the most advanced, well-funded operatives could be outmaneuvered by invisible networks rooted in culture, terrain, and long-term human intelligence. It wasn't just about technology or training anymore. was about who understood the local game better. And in this case, whoever orchestrated the vanishing of 11 Mossad agents had played the local game to perfection, leaving behind no trace but a haunting message. Even ghosts can be hunted. In a world where intelligence once moved unseen, silently shaping destinies from the shadows, the disappearance of 11 elite Israeli agents on Indian soil sends a thunderous message to every corner of the global power structure. This was not just a mission gone wrong. It was a masterclass in modern counterintelligence, exposing cracks in systems believed to be impenetrable. Whether it was an Iranian masterstroke, a signal of India's quiet recalibration, or moved by a third force lurking in silence, one truth remains unshaken. The rules of the great game are changing. No operation is too secret, no agent too skilled, no state too untouchable. The balance of power is shifting, not by declarations, but by disappearances. And in that silence, the world is forced to listen. To those watching, to those wondering, to those rising, remember, in the fight for truth, strategy, and sovereignty, it's not always the loudest who win. Sometimes it's the ones who disappear that echo the loudest. Thank you for listening. Stay aware, stay resilient, and never stop questioning the silence. Good luck, and may your journey through truth always be fearless.